Welcome to the DrivingMaul show. How accurate are the world rankings? I'm Paul, I'll be your host this evening. Yes, we had a whole plethora of international rugby at the weekend, both on the women's side and the men's side. The women's reaching the semi-finals of the Rugby World Cup, and the men's the first full weekend of November international action in the end of year internationals window. So yes, plenty of rugby going on this weekend or last weekend, and there will be plenty of rugby coming up this next weekend. Obviously, the final of the Women's Rugby World Cup, and also the third, fourth playoff place, and the men are playing their second full round of games in the international window. So lots and lots of rugby going on there. And I was just honest, folks, you could tell I was waffling because you know what? I was waiting for Mr. Harris to join me because I thought, you know what, am I going to have to go through this all on my own, or we have the expert opinion from the man from the north? How you doing, sir? And we like to start how we intend to continue, which means we don't go off mute.
We'll start again. Take two. Pleasure to be on the show, Paul. Good to be here.
Good to see you. So, where were you for the rugby this weekend? Did you make it to Eden Park for the double header? Or
yeah. No. Regrettably, I actually didn't. I'd had a pretty big week work-wise, and found myself a little bit on the tired side. So I thought I'd put my feet up. Saw it was on pretty much free to air, Television 3, and that was my choice of viewing. So, and of course, caught up with a lot of the replays of the international games the following day.
Oh, you lazy ass! Didn't get up in the morning, eh? Didn't get up in the middle of the night to watch games like I did. So I did that. I was up in the middle of the night. So I'm not sure how much I remember of the games, but I was there watching them. Again, I was also watching on TV3, but I don't have a TV. I watch everything online on my computer, and so it was great to see that TV3 were also streaming it live for free in New Zealand as well, which was fantastic. So something that surprised me, which means that I missed the Red Roses game, but did watch the Black Ferns game in that one. Well, let's kick off with the women's rugby side of things on this one then. And so first semi-final, Canada versus England, 19-26. England getting the win that I think everybody expected. But as I say, I didn't see this one, but by all reports, not having it all their own way, and it was and Canada pushed them a lot closer than was expected, Stephen.
Oh, listen, very, very much so. Full credit to the Canadians. They certainly found a level that I hadn't seen them play at this particular Rugby World Cup. And I've got to admit, the way England started scoring two very early tries, I thought it was going to be a long day at the office for the Canadians. But you know what? They actually they hung tough. They stayed in the fight, and they pushed England all the way. I always felt though, before you get fully into the game, that I think England always had this game under control for some reason.
Well, yeah, I think it's one of those ones. We were discussing online as to who goes in as favourites to the final in our chat group, and Boa was in there saying surely the Black Ferns do, and then I sort of pointed out to him, and I was going to go back and have a quick look at those stats that I pulled up and told to him about. But England haven't basically lost like 2 games in the past 6 years. Oh, sorry, 3 games in the past 6 years, I think it was, something like that. Anyway, of those, 2 of them have been to New Zealand and 1 to France. But in this, basically in this last World Cup cycle, they've only lost once in that time, or was it twice in that time, which is absolutely nuts. Which means that, yes, they do go into any game anywhere in the world as favourites, and they have earned that one to do that. Yeah, the last loss was back in 2019. They lost only once in 17 and 18 as well. So it's been a cracking run of games, and so there's obviously a lot of confidence in that England team that doesn't matter what situation you put them in, they're going to they know they can come through and get the win.
Oh, very much so, Paul. Listen, they were impressive in terms of taking up the Women's Six Nations Championship during the early part of the 2022 season. Like you say, unbeaten pretty much now in 30-odd games. They deserve to go into this cup final definitely as the favourites. They're the team to beat. You think back a year ago, they put the Black Ferns away quite comfortably in a 2-test series. I know these are completely different circumstances and it's a completely different Black Ferns team, but on saying that, there's a lot of experience in this English pack, and boy, they've got the perfect director in Zoe Harrison at first five to drive them around the paddock, and the likes of Scarrett in the midfield. They are good in the back line. Even if you look at out wide with Dow Rowland, who went off with an injury, I'm not too 100% sure if she'll be available for the final, and McDonald on the other wing. They have got pace to match the Black Ferns on the outside, and I think just heading back to that first semi-final against Canada, I think that's where they had it against the Canadians. The Canadians did well to stay in the fight of that game, and they got a lot of mileage off their bench, I've got to say, the Canadians. But I think the English style suited their style as well, confrontational, and I think the Canadians stood up to them. But I'll tell you what, special mention to De Goody, the Canadian captain at number 8. I thought she was very good, and I thought the halfback Pelletier was really, really good. She's world class for Canada, but they got a lot of mileage off their bench by Fuamba and also Beko Abum, who I thought were really willing ball carriers, but without really looking like they were going to win the game. But boy, England showed they got some strike power from turnover ball, probably scored one of the tries, if not the try of the tournament, going 100 metres from inside their own goal line. And of course, it was that lady Dow just showing, actually, I think it might have actually been McDonald on the other wing, on the left wing, just showing an amazing bit of pace to actually scoot down the touchline and finish off that try. In fact, it was Dow who scored that fantastic try, and that came around about the 50th minute, and up until then it was 18-12, and the Canadians had a period of dominance for that while. So that turnover just pretty much broke their back, Paul. Sorry to waffle.
No, not at all. I missed the game, so good to hear your thoughts on it. On the second game, then, the Black Ferns against Les Bleus, or New Zealand versus France, and boy, this was a cracking game. First off, New Zealand had a bit of a tactical change, bringing Holmes in the 15 jersey, bringing a bit more of a kicking option at the back there, and dropping an unlucky Letty Lange to the bench. She's been a cracking player for the Black Ferns for a couple of years now. Someone I've had the luck and the joy to talk to on a couple of occasions, which has been great. So yeah, a slight tactical change there in the back three for them going into this one, with obviously expecting a pretty kicking game from France. I think they'll probably do something similar against England as well. But France went out to a 10-0 lead in this one, and I thought, yes, whilst the Black Ferns have been talked up a lot going into this one, I think that people hadn't really given France the respect that they deserved. I think in the New Zealand media. Now I know that they're deliberately trying to get behind the local team, but even so, the Black Ferns did well to pull that back to 10-all, only for a try right on half time to give France that 10-17 lead. And I thought that the sort of momentum going into half time, that would be put France in a real strong position. But I was wrong. You come out, Tui scores an early try, and the Black Ferns pull it out to a 25-17 lead there. France get themselves back into it. A couple of late yellow cards and a kick at the death to win it. Just got missed, meaning that the Black Ferns came out on top by a single point. Boy, oh boy, cracking game. And as you say, a team that had beaten New Zealand by 40 points before Christmas. It comes down to a 1-point game that could have gone either way with that last kick. But just show you, as you say, that this is a different Black Ferns team to the one that we saw in November last year.
Oh, totally agree, Paul. And of course, new head coach as well. And, we know the credentials of the professor, Wayne Smith. I'm sure you've shared a beer with him down your way, Paul. I mean, so this is a very intelligent coach. Even though he may have so-called been away from top-level rugby for a while, that doesn't take away the guy's brain power. Very, very smart man. I first thought that first 20 minutes of the second half, the Black Ferns dominated that. The try that Ruby Tui scored off a Rene Holmes kick to the corner, just absolutely fantastic. And then they got the crowd in behind them, and once again Fitzpatrick scoring around about the 57th minute mark, and you just thought, after Demont also kicked a penalty in the 63rd minute, that maybe this Black Ferns team was gonna kick away. But I suppose they were the architects of a little bit of their own demise, Paul, where they could have basically tightened that game up. But listen, one thing the French really did well in the first half, the French got a lot of turnovers, about 4 or 5 turnovers. And yep, you can play the game at pace against this French team, but if you are isolated, they're very, very good over the ball, this French team, and I thought they showed a lot of character also to get themselves back in the game, which set us up for that pretty amazing grandstand finish.
Yeah, cracking finish. You mentioned the crowd there. Got to say, a little bit disappointed to see so many empty seats at Eden Park for that one. Look, still a bigger crowd than you pointed out than at the last Rugby World Cup that was in Ireland. The big crowds that's gone recently have been in England and France. So look, unfortunately, so what's happened with the Women's Rugby World Cup in previous years is it's been practically in 1 or 2 venues, and it's been a much smaller affair this year. What's the first kind of time they were going to try and, I think, take it around the country a bit, but COVID put pay to that, and hence it's been held just in Whangarei and Auckland because of that. And then that means that essentially, you're down to just a couple of venues. I'll be honest, I'm not a great fan of double headers. Now, I know they even had some triple headers during this tournament, because I think 6 hours to 2 hours either way was thank you, Simon. Saying so last year the final was only was 18,000 was all they could get there. Well, I think 2 hours for a game and an hour break. That's 5 hours at least you're there for, if not closer to 6. That's a long time to be sitting and watching rugby. Sure, people do it for cricket, but that's generally in the sunshine, and you're making a day of it with a picnic in your paper, and it's all a bit of a relaxed atmosphere. Rugby is more about watching the game, and it's not so much about hanging out per se. So I'm not a big fan of those double headers. I think people turn up for just the game they want to see, rather than necessarily the full time, most of them. But but your thoughts on that one, Stephen?
Yeah, it's quite interesting, Paul. You talk about the respect piece. I think there may have been a bit of a lack of respect for the French, because just checking the TAB odds for that particular game, France were paying around about $3, and I must admit I jumped on them. Just basically because that's what you do when the odds offering are very good. So there might have been a feeling that this French team were quite beatable, and the Black Ferns were going to roll over them. But listen, I think the 22 to 25,000 that turned up on Saturday, they're the lucky ones, Paul. Anybody who didn't make it, has basically missed out. There's even a bit of regret on my part that I didn't make it as tired as I was. I had a couple of friends there, and boy, they were waxing lyrical the next day via text message. What a great game they had. And of course, listen, I think because it was such a great game, I think it's maybe, and also free to air as well, Paul. I think that's where probably the public may have missed out, because you kind of looked at the figures. I heard on the radio that through Television 3, there was something like 950,000 viewers that viewed the game. But after they totaled the live streaming, it took it to over 1 million. So that probably says to me that there's not really a lot who are tuning in on Spark Sport at the moment. So there's a bit of a message there, Paul. I do wonder if if this game was sort of open to more people, free to air from day to dot, so they can see some of the wonderful tries that these teams are capable of scoring. It just might have made people think a lot more, because a lot of the comments since post game I'm hearing is, guys people coming out of the woodwork saying, wow, this is the first time I've seen a full women's game. Didn't realize it was that good. So, maybe a little bit of, shall I say, I'm trying to look for a word, that maybe a little bit of ignorance more than anything else, Paul, about how good maybe this product can be.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, you're quite right. I think a lot of people will comment about stuff without actually necessarily have been there and giving it a go and actually watching it themselves properly. And then we'll or they'll have watched the game from 5 years ago and just continue with that opinion without actually sort of watching it more recently. But it was a cracking game. It's definitely and hopefully, well, I hear that it's already a sellout for the final, which again is another double header as well. So. Great for that to be to have got to that stage, and that we are going to have a proper sellout for the final. Now, the problem with free to air is obviously money at the end of the day, and getting it to there, and it's a chicken and egg thing. Well, it's one of those sort of things like you want to build the audience, but also you need to get some money in to make it professional in the first place. So I understand why they went with they went with that and behind a paywall. And look, people are complaining about Spark. Oh, not many people can see it. Well, look, if it's behind Sky or behind Spark, sure, Spark is the newcomer. It's got a smaller audience. It's not as well known. But look, rugby has been behind a paywall for a long time now, and I think that's kind of normal. I think complaining about Spark, I think it's a bit unfair on Spark. They're just doing what they can to try and get themselves to be relevant. I think they're going to struggle now that Sky have got the World Rugby events from now on and got the rugby and the league and the football. You kind of wonder how long Spark's going to stick around for. But hey, they gave it a shot. It is what it is.
Yeah, listen, I've got to say, Paul, that I don't think Spark have always helped themselves. You think back to 2019 when they got the Rugby World Cup rights, and there was a lot of issues in and around streaming. And I know a lot of people found that frustrating. And listen, I know of many people who basically, with all the streaming issues they had, thought, no, listen, forget it. I'm not going to go down that park again. And if you kind of look at their competitor, Sky, they're getting the rugby back. They've already got the English Premier League back. So, once again, they've probably hit back on the back of some problems that Spark Sporters have, with the greatest of respect. Listen, I just want to say, though, what it's going to do for women's rugby in New Zealand, I think it could be quite incredible, Paul. If you can imagine the youngsters that are heading out to watch this game and certainly taking inspiration with the way the Black Ferns are playing, and listen, how they portray, how they come across as a team. They certainly come across as a team that's having a lot of fun, and they definitely do things as seen by a couple of the media conferences we've seen with Wayne Smith. They certainly do things a lot different than what the men do.
Absolutely. Look, when I've the problem is kind of, I guess the comment here is in the when I've actually had access to the players. Look, they are all being very helpful. Sorry. Having a little bit of a problem here, folks, because I've got a lemon pip stuck in my straw for my gin and tonic that I'm drinking during the show. So I'm having a quick go at trying to clear that out while we're talking. But I think the girls understand in a way that or the ladies, sorry, I'll get. We do say the boys, don't we, for the rugby players as well. So where I think the boys don't really get the idea, understanding that of their responsibility to grow the game. I think the girls do in that one. So and that comes across in how they deal with the media, and it's much more relaxed about it. I'm not quite sure they're not quite so scared of the media and the fact that they'll do exposés and stuff on us. Well, maybe that's because they don't mess around like the boys do. Some of them, and they don't get themselves in as much trouble as well. So for everyone who is listening, especially on the podcast, who's wondering, have I managed to get the pip out of the straw? Yes, I have. We're back in action for the gin and tonic, so all is good with the world. Don't worry. Simon says streaming issues were kind of exaggerated. Really, I found Spark Sport to be an absolutely bizarre, a real problem for the Rugby World Cup, for the men's Rugby World Cup. Sorry, last year in not last year, a few years back now. 2019. I had buffering problems in most of the games. So yeah, it was a much inferior product to what I see with Sky. I still occasionally get buffering with Sky. Sky is far from perfect, and trying to find historical stuff that you want to on through the Sky interface is an absolute nightmare. If you don't know which program it was on and which channel it was on, and which time it was on, yeah, good luck trying to find replays and stuff. So having had having had that that problem with Spark, I have not paid for Spark this year, and have just the first game I watched was actually the semi-finals. I will watch the final. I think TV3 streaming service works perfectly. Was happy with that. I don't know how good it is for going around finding historical rugby games, but they don't have very many rugby games. Let's be honest. That's not their raison d'etre. That's not why they exist. But it is why Sky exists. So anyway, on that, so yes, broadcasting, I've been happy with that side of things. So come the finals, then we've got Canada versus France in the third, fourth place playoff. Now look, these third, fourth place playoffs are always very difficult to pick. Clearly, France should go into this one as favourites, but the problem is how serious or how will they approach the game? Will they already have? Will they be so disappointed with how they did that they're already on the plane home? Will they pick a full strength side, or is this an opportunity to give players in the wider squad who haven't had much game time? So you don't know how these two teams are going to take it, but so that's a bit of a coin flip as to how that game will pan out, unless you have some insights, Stephen.
Yeah, listen, it would not surprise me if Canada wins this game, because I think as much as gutted as they were against England, I think they'll pull up a little bit better than what the French team did. It wouldn't surprise me if there's probably the French make a few changes as well, and like you say, give the rest of their squad a run. And listen, at the end of the day, I know it's that game that nobody wants to play, but third place is third place at the end of the day, and I think both these teams will want to go out with a strong showing.
Absolutely, particularly Canada, who have endured a whole plethora of issues over the last couple of years. It's been an absolute nightmare for them. So yeah, I think they will, in particular, as you say, will want to sign off on a positive note. I don't think they were expecting. I think they're probably more hoping to make the final than expecting to. Whereas I think France might have been expecting to get there. And I think, so as you say, I think they will be in a better. Canada should be or could be in a better mind frame for the game. And then we got the final, England versus New Zealand. Again, doubleheader at Eden Park. I think we already said that England going to this one as favourites, but boy, oh boy, the Black Ferns have turned things around massively, as we've said, with those results, as we've shown with those results against France. England beat France in the group stages, so do go into this one as favourites, with only 1 point win by the Black Ferns, remember. However, on the day, who knows, will the expectation on England become too much? I think it has definitely cramped them. I think they have struggled with that during this tournament. They haven't performed to their best because of that. So will that get to them on the day? Some people are calling the Black Ferns favourites. So will that actually, will the Black Ferns be able to play with the same style and freedom they have been playing with, or will again the expectation get to some of those players? We'll have to wait and see. I mean, I'm not expecting any players like your Portia Woodmans are going to be absolutely fine, but they've got a very young captain at the moment, running at 10, for example, as well as other young players in this team. So we'll see. They've never played in a Rugby World Cup final in front of their own fans at home in New Zealand. So Stephen, who knows how the emotions are going to be?
Yeah, exactly. I know you could probably see if you didn't see the Canada game, England started, they looked very, very nervous, and I just wondered if it was a byproduct of not having played, pretty much breezing through a lot of the pool games, looking pretty comfortable. Canada put some early pressure on them, and no doubt the same will apply to New Zealand, who looked a bit like possums in the headlights in that first 10 or 15 minutes against France as well. I think this particular game will be won by the key game drivers, and that's probably why I make England favourites. I think England are very, very good in the halves. They will come at the Black Ferns very hard. I must admit, I was very impressed with the Black Ferns scrum. It stood up to the French pack at set piece time. It probably wasn't a lot of scrums, as many as I thought they would be. I don't think New Zealand really gave France a lot of time to settle. On saying that, it's just such an intriguing battle, Paul. That's the thing about it. You can't say one or the other. Yeah, England definitely go into the match as favourites on the back of the record. But how much of a hometown will that home crowd advantage be? There's a whole lot of anomalies here. It's pretty exciting, really. It's probably, we got some great rugby coming up the weekend, but it's probably the match of the weekend. Probably one little thing to throw in the spanner in the works. Of course, a lot of precipitation up here in Auckland today, and we're expecting a little bit more weather for the wet weather for the next couple of days. Saturday looks like that we could have some so conditions for Saturday, so that also might play into England's hands if it's wet underfoot or dewy.
Absolutely. Well, I don't think dew's going to be the problem. I don't think it's going to be. It's going to be wet, folks. We've got 100% right chance of rain on Friday, so Friday is going to be wet. So the grass is not going to be dry, even if it doesn't rain. It's still going to be wet underfoot. So the ball is going to be a bit damp, so that's going to make throwing it around a little bit harder. Now, if it's actually raining, that makes it a lot harder, and we'll have to see. So yes, as you say, stick it up the jumper, and the girls are coming for you. I think it's going to be is what the Black Ferns are going to expect to see.
I was going to say it's fine on Monday.
That's for the that's for the cup parade if the Black Ferns win it.
I was going to say let's not go down there, Paul.
So moving on then, there has been some sad news with the news that Kevin Hart, who has passed away, who apparently I'm not someone that I now recognise, but apparently is the voice of Waikato rugby, and was calling matches over 35 years here. A name you're aware of, Stephen? Kevin, I'll say I'm someone I don't.
Very much so. From a radio sport days, was basically the host of the Country Breakfast on a Sunday morning. Kevin Hart, also a very good commentator for cricket commentator for radio sport, but also the voice of Waikato and Chiefs rugby for quite a few seasons. I think he might have called his last game several years ago, and I know somebody like Nigel Yeldon pretty much came under his tutorship as Kevin was coming towards the end of his career, and he was certainly a guy who painted some great pictures and made a game sound very, 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 very exciting. A class broadcaster and a class caller. And listen, our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and his friends around the country. Certainly a sad loss for those in the broadcasting industry. It's been one of those years, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, very well said there, Stephen. We'll move on now to the rugby from the weekend. And what I thought I would do is have a look at how the results matched up against the against the world rankings. So we'll just have a look up here as the results. So we kicked off the weekend with Romania hosting Chile, who've got a 7-point win to the side that had the better world ranking there. Samoa then hosted Fiji, getting a 16-point win. And again, I think both of those went the way that we kind of expected them. Italy then beat Samoa by 32 points, a massive win. And we see Italy there ranked 14th in the world, with Samoa at 11th. One of the things we've heard and has been mentioned a lot of times is that because of Italy's low rankings, that they shouldn't be in the Six Nations. And yet when they come to these kind of November games, they tend to win. So I do think that their world ranking is depressed by the fact that they do play such strong countries most of the time, and perhaps that one is a little lower than it should be seen.
Yeah, listen, no question. It's Italy. I'm looking around for some humble pie, Paul, but I can't find any lying around here. I've got to say, they're just showing that they are starting to improve and get better and better. And of course, a lot of their players play in the respective European competitions. So you can only get better from a Samoan point of view. I've got to say that's a really disappointing result for Samoa, but we don't know what sort of resources are thrown at Samoa, e.g. how long they've actually been together. We know that some of these Six Nations teams have actually been together for a couple of weeks already in training camps, etc. Scotland, Fiji, once again, that's probably a game I could have probably gone either way. It wasn't Scotland's top side, shall we say. They had a couple of others unavailable for that game, but it's about right. And I must admit, I tuned in a little bit to that Romania-Chile game. They were actually showing that live on a Facebook, and I had a bit of a look. And Romania in that game got out to a heck of a lead, but Chile came back at Romania, and Romania just really basically hung on at the end of the day. So yeah, some good footy, some good close footy. So the matchups were reasonably good.
Yeah, and so the rankings were pre-game. Christopher in the live chat, they're asking us their pre-game and post-game. And Simon points out, the smart money into Samoan rugby hopefully will be helping them. So that's hopefully we'll see them heading in the right direction. Then we had a couple of Tier 1 games. Wales getting thumped by New Zealand by 32 points. This was New Zealand, the All Blacks, most points they've ever scored against, or equal most points they've scored against Wales, and the most overseas. Which shows a big gap there between 4th and 7th place. Then we had a cracking game between Ireland and South Africa. Not cracking, perhaps not in the spectacle to watch, but tense is the right word, between 1st and 3rd, with Ireland coming out on top by 3 points. Now, one of the things that's really upset me this weekend and has kind of put me on a kind of questioning my support of rugby has just been the amount of vitriol towards the referee that we're getting. My Twitter feed seems to be rugby fans complaining about referees and people complaining about Elon Musk taking over Twitter. So at the moment, it's not a fun place to be, and I'm wondering out whether I'll give up Twitter, to be honest with you, because it just seems to be a dumpster fire. And this is for someone who's made an effort to actually kind of curate my feed to kind of get rid of that kind of stuff, but even I've not been able to get rid of it. So, look, one of the things I want to stay on, we won't be talking about is the referee on this one. Look, Ireland cement their position as number 1, beat South Africa in a tense game, and well done to them.
Oh yeah, very very much so, and credit to Ireland. They had a few people missing, a few bodies missing from that team that beat New Zealand out in pretty much their springtime pool, their spring internationals, or our sort of winter internationals. They just showed that they've got a little bit of depth there when it matters. Although I'm saying that after watching the two respective second 15s of New Zealand and Ireland, I'm sort of it's hard to say, but once again with this Irish team, they're pretty well coached. And listen, at the end of the day, I thought despite South Africa coming back, I actually thought the Irish actually deserved this win. They were just a little bit more accurate than what the South Africans were. Yeah,
and I think, as you say, what we've seen is that Ireland have got enough depth for one team, not really for two, in every position except number 10. Yet again, is this year they're very reliant on Johnny Sexton, and that hasn't changed, and that will also be their big thing come Rugby World Cup time. Again on that one, we'll move on to Spain versus Tonga. Spain losing by 34 points to a team that's ranked one place beneath them. Look, again, I think this is an artificially high ranking for Spain because of the fact that they play in they very rarely play what you would call to be tier 1 or tier 1.5 teams. They're doing their hardest opponents are normally Romania and Georgia. So I think Spain there, the gap between Italy and Spain is much bigger than one place. So I think that's an artificially high one there. But so yeah, good performance by Tonga in that one. France, Australia. Wow, this one again, another one that was close to the end. 1 point difference now. Obviously, France toured Australia a couple of years ago now, I think it is, or last year. In that someone that took a weaker, obviously they always tour mid-year with a weaker team and came away losing that series. So France will be happy with that victory over them. And so yeah, so Stephen, you have your sort of thoughts on those kind of games. I guess we'll probably come back and talk about the All Blacks team when we look towards next weekend.
Yeah, just on the France Tonga game, I had a quick look at the Tongan lineup, and boy, that wasn't a bad sort of lineup they had on the paddock. Just to give you an idea, that back line of Havili, Moala, Fekitoa, Whaianuku, and Kata. That's probably not the worst back line. So, they obviously had to work hard. It was only 18-6 at half time, but sort of 22 unanswered points in the second half. You would have probably expected them to have kicked on from there. They may be missing a few for the Tongans, but at least it gets their autumn series of games underway in the right way. Just on to Australia, France. Boy, a lot closer than a lot of us had predicted. I once again watched the highlights of that game last night and a little bit more of the extended highlights. I was really impressed with Australia that they actually stood up to the French pack. A problem for the Australians, they just make a lot of simple, basic errors, Paul, and I suppose that can be seen by the winning try that came at the end. Really and truthfully, that was some pretty awful defending when once you've got to the front and you had the winning of the game, and that probably would have been their best victory of 2023, and they've let a couple escape like that along the way, namely that Bledisloe Cup performance in Melbourne, and that's probably two big scalps that they actually could have taken in 2023. But as I described to somebody, they're probably the best team running around with the worst record at the moment, Paul, because I think there's about 5 or 6 of their internationals this year that they've actually lost by probably less than 6 points, and probably at least 3 or 4 of them they probably should have won at the end of the day. I think we'll get a little bit more of a gauge on France come the end of the autumn series. Maybe it takes a little bit for some of these Northern Hemisphere teams to grind, or basically, should I say, gel. I know the counter argument is maybe some of the other teams haven't played for a while. Australia, to be fair, had that game under their belt against Scotland, but I actually thought it was actually a step up from where they had played against Scotland the week before, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, France got the Springboks this coming weekend, and then Japan. So I think this coming weekend will be another real test for them. That's going to be a cracker there. So yeah, to have Australia followed by South Africa, I think France are going to have a real test on that one. Look, as you say, I think Dave Rennie and also I've gone blank. Scotland head coach's name. Oh, anyway, those two coaches are the ones at the moment. Gregor Townsend are the two that seem to be getting a little bit of flack at the moment and to be a bit under pressure. But two of them that kind of have teams that are kind of that can fire on their day, but just seem to just mess things up when they shouldn't do. And which is so two teams there that actually, that could have better records with a bit more luck their way.
I was going to say too, coupled with some absolute coach killers as well, the likes of Rob Valentini. We know what a wonderful player he is, but something that he isn't is a kicker of a rugby ball. Paul, just those are the sort of things that just are absolute coach killers. Firing the hooker, which basically escapes my name, the replacement name, his line out throwing, little things like that matter, and you've got to get those right, and those little moments can be the difference between winning and losing. And so from an Australian point of view, to my way of thinking, that was a missed opportunity. But on saying all this, that I suppose one thing Rennie hasn't been able to do because of injuries and unavailabilities is probably getting his best combinations on the paddock, and I just suspect if they can get consistency into their selection, I think that will give them a much better chance of winning more games.
Yeah, there are certain teams that seem to sort of hog injuries or create injuries. I mean, the Chiefs being a classic one in Super Rugby. So yes, it's you kind of go, well, how much of that injury is down to luck and bad management? Who knows? But moving on then, 3 games I'm going to run through quickly. Look, USA beat Kenya by 54 points, and Portugal beat Hong Kong by 28 points. So look, the Rugby World Cup qualifying games going as we'd expect there. We're expecting the USA and Portugal to basically meet in round 3 as a de facto final for that final place at the the Men's Rugby World Cup in France next year. So I'm not sure that, and I didn't watch those, but apparently Simon was saying that the stream by World Rugby wasn't being particularly good, and he makes the point there that look, the USA are a fully professional team, whereas Kenya is semi-professional or even amateur. And I think you'll find the same there across basically the other 3 teams. So I expect the USA to beat Hong Kong and Portugal to beat Kenya quite comfortably this coming weekend. Georgia also saw off Uruguay by 16 points. Look, there's 5 places between them in the world rankings. Not a big surprise there as well. Uruguay much improved, obviously getting themselves being America's 1 for the first time ever heading into the Rugby World Cup. So hat tip to them for that. But still some way to go against Georgia, who, along with Japan, are kind of the 2. Well, Japan I think more so than Japan and Fiji more so than Georgia, but they're in that kind of crowd who are fighting to become a tier 1 country rather than a tier 2 one. Finally, then the last game, which was the final upset, as it were, if we're going by world rankings, was England losing to Argentina by a solitary point in this one. Dear me, as an England fan, hurts to see this. You kind of wonder what Eddie Jones is up to nowadays. Manu Tuilagi actually completed a game. He didn't hobble off, which was a wow. Since the first time since like the 2011 Rugby World Cup. He's someone who's promised so much, and unfortunately his injury has totally hindered that promise. But congratulations to Argentina, knocked off the All Blacks in New Zealand. Now have knocked off England in England, and Cheika. I think one of the things we probably learned about Cheika, Stephen, when he finished up at the Wallabies and became a TV pundit, he actually knows his rugby. He isn't a guy that there was all this kind of image that he was just a guy who basically coached on emotion while he was at the Wallabies. But you could tell from his punditry that he knows his stuff, and he's actually a very good tactical coach, or he's tactically knowledgeable. And we're actually now seeing again getting played out on the pitch by the Pumas.
Yeah, real all-rounder as well. One minute he's coaching Lebanon in the Rugby League World Cup, and the next minute he's actually coaching Lebanon, playing in a World Cup game in front of about 2,000 people, and the next minute he's coaching England at Twickenham in front of about 60. What does that hold? 60,000, Paul?
80,000.
Well, yeah, incredible. And there's even word that he's going to get that he could be involved with the Australian cricket team as well, and that's a true story. That's not we're not making this stuff up, as we say. Paul, I got to watch
he's the guy to ship in for a crisis. And look, Australia haven't made the playoffs of the whatever that cricket tournament that's happening over in Australia. They've been knocked out of it themselves. So boy, oh boy, bring him in. That's what they need. Sorry, Steve.
And he'll turn it around. Listen, I watched the full replay last night of the England Argentina game. I must admit, I don't know how I did it, Paul, but I actually managed to do it. But they obviously had quite a bit of rain in London leading up to that Sunday afternoon start. So it was very, very damp on the ground. But what really surprised me about this game, England tried to play very direct in a very narrow channel, but when they actually moved the ball a little bit wider, they actually looked reasonably good, Paul. But I think just playing in those narrow channels, played right into Argentina's hands. And credit to Argentina, they only had a couple of opportunities and they scored the try of the match with a very, very good intricate movement with a couple of dummy runners and freed a bit of space. And they also scored off an England mistake as well. So it was a case of them taking their opportunities, but there were times that England actually got in behind the advantage line, but unfortunately would come up with a little bit of a mistake. And I don't know if they had quite had the right sort of balance, Paul. They had Otoji playing on the blind side, and he always plays a reasonably good game, but to me that mix doesn't quite seem right with that back row of Vunipola and also Curry, who was on the open side. And I must admit there was a little bit of spark to that English side when the replacement came on. Now I think his name is Van Porterveld, who came on and replaced Ben Youngs, who was basically, I think he most kept English scrum half, might be something along those lines.
Yes, yeah.
And Porterveld pretty much scored with his first touch, so it must have been the fastest on score on debut that I've ever seen, Paul. But I know there's a lot of criticism with regards to the service of Ben Youngs at the moment. But I think Eddie Jones is quite a fan of having Marcus Smith and also Owen Farrell in that particular team because of his goal kicking. But I do wonder if it upsets their attacking mix, Paul.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not a great fan of Farrell at 12, to be honest with you. I would like more Tuolangi there if he's going to play. Have him at 12 rather than at 13. Yeah, and some comments in the live chat about England need pace in the back line. Yep, it's not really. They've got elusive runners, but not pacey runners in there. Now, before we get on to a Van der Fleer kind of thing, Jack Van Plavelt might sound South African, but actually he was born in Norwich in England. So don't let's not head down that one. Paul, was Ben Young's wrong selection? Look, in hindsight, yes, absolutely. Eddie Jones has made an absolute dog's breakfast of developing a 9 to replace or to challenge Ben Young's, a bit like both Schmidt and Andy Farrell have made a dog's breakfast of finding any cover for Johnny Sexton in Ireland. He is unfortunately no one has had game time at 9 and built up experience. So good luck to the kid. He's only 21 and maybe 48. I do feel like I actually call him a kid nowadays, even though he's an adult. So good luck to him. And cracking first try, great for him to be there, to sort of spot that gap, go for it, and to get that try. Show his fearless, and that was great to see. Great for him, his start. Okay, let's get on to the All Blacks now then, because I suppose we are New Zealand based, and whilst I'm speaking in an English accent, it's the game that we kind of have the most focus on. And look, cracking result by the All Blacks there. A couple of questions for you then, Stephen. Has Foster accidentally found his answer to 12 in Geordie Barrett?
I think he has, Paul. I think he has, because the more that Geordie Barrett beds himself into the position, the better he looks. And boy, he just gives them a little bit more. He just gives them a little bit more option. It also gives them a really good kicking option in the midfield as well. And of course, you actually saw that combination that he has with his brother as well when he scored a try at the end. But he's got the full round game. He's the sort of guy you can basically range a little bit wider as well. You know that he offers a threat with the high kick in the air. So we actually saw his full range of skill. You could almost say Foxer has accidentally stumbled upon not just a second five, but also a forwards coach as well, Paul.
Well, yeah. So okay, that's your second five. Now let's the next one then is is Will Jordan the best fullback in the world and only the fourth best fullback in for the All Blacks? Now we got Geordie out of there. He still can't get a start because Bowden's in there. Again, for that dual playmaker thing. Is Bowden forever going to be the wannabe 10 who actually plays at 15?
Oh, you did right, Paul. So many options, and they're all interchangeable. I mean, so Geordie Barrett, what he brings to that 15 jersey is his option taking. Whilst we didn't really see a lot of the All Black outside backs, and that was primarily because of the game plan that the All Blacks used in terms of taking the Welsh on through the middle. Man, they just sport with riches at the back at the moment, and they've also shown via the New Zealand 15 they've got some injury cover as well with Ruben Love and also Sean Stevenson, who can slot into fullback or wing. So there's just so many areas. They're almost like sport for riches, but we're not too sure who their actual back division should be. I suppose the only one that, once again, we saw Rieko Ioane slip onto the wing and look at home on the wing. Somebody sent me a text today. Is Jack Goodhue still in this frame for the Rugby World Cup? Well, if you were picking 4 midfielders right now, you'd be picking Geordie Barrett, you'd be picking Rieko Ioane, Anton Leonard-Brown, David Havili, and if you were picking another one, well, that's either going to come from Tuivasa Sheck or maybe Goodhue. But I'd say Goodhue, is probably about number 6 at the moment, Paul.
Purely because he hasn't played. I think he would get ahead of probably ahead of David Havili if he has game time. But he has to have game time, which means if he doesn't play, it means he has to play a full Super Rugby season for him to be considered for the World Cup next year. Otherwise, you're right, he's not going, which is a real shame because he's a cracking player. There's no two ways about it. And you're putting Anton Leonard-Brown in there, having only played like 1 game. Again, he also has to prove that he can actually play more than 3 games without getting injured. Both of those guys need a good Super Rugby campaign.
Yeah, one player who will have to look at an aspect of his game is Caleb Clark, and I'm just really talking about his defence. Listen, that was a very slick move by Wales that actually opened up the All Blacks, and the guy on debut, Dyer, I think his name was, scored the try. But just basically looking at the replays of that, listen, they probably just didn't get that right. A couple of players jammed up close, which freed the winger up in a little bit of space, and a very late reaction from Caleb Clark, but maybe a little bit harsh because he's got to stay out on his wing as well.
Yeah, look, and it's we are, and look, these are harsh comments about these players. These players, they have one opportunity to get it to qualify to get these things right. Look at the number of kind of runs that some of these players have. They might have 3 runs in a game, and if they don't score a try on those 3 runs, you go, what are they doing, boy? It's not many of they don't get. It's not like us quite often. If you put a tweet out there that doesn't work, you can put another tweet out there, put another one out there. You can have 10 goes before to get one. These guys only have 1 or 2 goes and have to get it right there. So, but yeah, so I would be a bit I would cut him some slack on that one. Because defensively, you can get the read occasionally wrong. Obviously, you don't really want to, but yes, a great weapon on attack has been mentioned there by Nocturnal Rights. I guess positions I would question. I guess Sever Reese on the wing there. I might want a Will Jordan, preferably there on that one in a first choice side. But I think you can't play Jordan all the time. You have to rotate players around. But we've talked about the back line quite a bit. Let's talk about the pack then. I mean, I think the front 5 pretty much Taylor or Takilaho kind of rotate around, and who starts, who goes on the bench. Look, it's good to give them both to manage their game time. So I'm happy with that. Happy with the Groots and Lomax. We've got that sorted. Happy with the kind of locks as well. But the big question mark has been that loose trio and the balance of it. So do you think again, has Foster again been forced by injury into finding his proper loose trio of
Uh,
Gazelle at 6, Papali'i
uh,
at 7, and Sevilla at 8?
Oh, listen, just before we get to those loose forwards, I've got to mention that tight 5. Once again, it probably took a lost series against the Irish, first up lost in the Rugby Championship to South Africa, for some changes in the front row. And boy, call it a master stroke by hook or by crook, or whether it was an accident or one of those things where you had to try something different. Boy, hasn't that been something that's basically turned to fruit by having the likes of obviously Lomax and De Groot, Takiaho, those guys come into to the front row, because they are solid, and I'm just loving their directness, Paul. They're big. They seem to be bigger bodies, more direct. I must admit, I was a bit concerned they brought Cody Taylor back into that front row, the way that his season gone, but obviously they want him to regain his confidence, because you want two hookers that are their best, and maybe Takiaho is the finisher and Cody Taylor the starter. But just getting on to about those loose forwards, I guess one thing we can't even think about changing anymore. I think you've got to have Artie at number 8, because at the moment he's playing like the best number 8 in the whirlpool, bar none. So I think you probably leave him there at the stage. And Dalton Papali'i, well, there's been question marks over him, that maybe he's one of these sort of flashy blues players that has been picked on the back of the Blues performances this year. But man, he offers a different type of style to Sam Cane. Probably better ball carrier out in the omic, more of a dynamic flanker, where Cane seems to be like an all-style 6 type, half 6, half 7 type loose forward, Paul.
Yeah, this one's Sam Cane is, when you look at the number of tackles he makes, it's unreal. It's quite his tackle stats, and hence, yeah, the kind of the unseen work in quotes there that he gets through. Yeah, I do have one complaint about Dalton Papali'i, and that's his bleached hair. I'm sorry, but I don't recognise it. It does. I don't know where that's come from, but I'm finding it hard. Yeah, I'm getting used to it. But no, I think in Papali'i and Sevilla, they've got the 7 and 8 sorted. I'm still not convinced by the 6 around having Fazell in there. Craig Crabstack style on YouTube. Asked what about Blackadder? Yep, I think he's in the shout. I do think though that the Akira Iwani experiment has probably run its course in my mind. I think a lot of people have written that off a lot longer than me. I still remember that. Yeah, he came on. I think it was last year or the year before, but when he came in initially, had some cracking performances for the All Blacks, particularly in the Rugby Championship, where they were very different to his style of games for the Blues, where he kind of just fades out of games or gets too much involved in the aggro. But yeah, I don't think he's maintained it this year. So I think the experiment with him has probably gone its course, in my opinion. But Jacobson, also another player, also a possibility in that one. So yeah, I think the 6th jersey is still up for grabs, but I would say now that I would go with that 7-8 combination personally.
I was going to say, Paul, with a smaller number 8, I don't think you can really afford not to have a bigger body in that 6th jersey. I think you need a bit of a bulk. You need somebody who's a very good line out option. And yeah, they've got it's almost like they've got a whole lot of moving parts, but they haven't quite found the part that goes in there. And that's what it is. There's a lot of parts in the box, but I can't quite find the right part that actually fits.
And at the end of the day, you've got to remember that it is about the combination of those three well, a combination of the pack as a whole, really. I mean, if you've got a particularly dynamic hooker or who can also play six, or you've got a particularly dynamic lock like an Itoji or a Courtney Laws, then you can play a different style at six. But we don't have that in the. I mean, if you've got Samasoni on, you don't need. He takes away the ball carrying need for the six, for example. But so perhaps you want a more jackling six or a more linking six for the passing. So it is a balance between all of those. It's not down to this player or this number must do this. But you're right, it is that balance between them all.
It's interesting that you say that. Just with England, they always seem to me have the right balance when Itoji and Hill are the two locks, and when they've got Courtney Laws in the six jersey. Look, they just add a little bit more athleticism. To me, when you with the two bigger locks that they had, I forget the name of the young lad that was on debut for England. He actually played well, as well, but they kind of looked a little cumbersome, to say the least. So getting that balance right is very important. It's a little bit like when the All Blacks have Retallick, Whitelock, and Barrett at six. Once again, it's a big pack, but is it a dynamic pack? No. Is it a direct pack? Yes, it probably is. So maybe a horses for courses type thing.
And look, we talked about Papali'i being a different style to Sam Cane. Look, he came second in the tackling stacks with 14, just missed one. Sam Whitelock topped those with 15, not missing any. Frizzell, 13 tackles, didn't miss any. Sevilla with 10. Now that work rate from Frizzell, I'm impressed by, because I kind of think of him more as a carrying six than a work rate six. And look, and he carried the ball 12 times. Already Sevilla 15 times. So he's got through that. I'm impressed by I think Frizzell had a particularly good game at the weekend. I'm not sure whether he can do that every single time that he turns out in that six jersey. But hey, hopefully he proves me wrong, because that means he's playing well and earning those caps, which would be great. Looking for any other sort of points or questions from last weekend?
Yeah, I suppose the only other one was a bit of a weird one. I mean, maybe some of our viewers can answer that. I know we get a few from South Africa, but I can't work out how a team like Wales go to South Africa almost by a whisker, almost end up pulling off a series over there. And basically, when they do come up against the All Blacks, they just tend to fall to pieces. So I'm just wondering, after 69 odd years, if it's just a mindset thing. It's almost like they're already beaten before they took the field, because obviously in our rugby chat, I'd predicted that maybe this is going to be Wales' best chance to knock over the All Blacks. Well, boy, how wrong was I? Because Wales, to be honest, I just thought they were really, really disappointing, and I thought usually in the forwards they're normally up for it, but I thought they were well and truly out physical. Good for the All Blacks, because we. Just seeing a little shift. We spoke about Jason Ryan before, and hopefully the All Blacks are now starting to understand there are games you're going to have to do the hard work up front and basically earn the right to go wide before you can do all the flashy stuff.
Yeah, so Dr. Wright said, South Africa tends to play down to a team's level. Johan Rugby, obviously from South Africa, so we always struggle against Wales. Then Wales, the All Blacks fan of Wales. I think also Wales have had a tendency of starting slowly in series as well, or in international windows. So again, by the All Blacks playing them first up, this is probably the worst that the Wales will be at during this window, and hence why they've the All Blacks executed and Wales didn't. Let's be blunt. They're also missing some players, and there's no Dan Bigger. And a few others as well. I can't remember off the top of my head. So they've got a number of injuries, but you've got to be able to cope with those injuries, because I think the All Blacks at the moment are actually missing quite a lot of players, and the All Blacks have got a bit of a injury suspension issue at the moment that they've not had for a long time, and I think we are. I wouldn't say, well, not necessarily testing depth, because what we're actually saying is we're getting the right players in. by luck rather than testing depth per se by Papi Leahy's, etc.
There is one other thing that's playing out in my mind as well. I see that Fletcher Christie has been released to the All Black second 15, and TJ Perenara has been brought into the All Black squad. So has all of a sudden, with the injury to Fakatava, has TJ jumped back into the top three in the squad again?
Well, actually, no. I'm looking at the All Blacks update here, and they say that this is exactly the topic we were going to go on to next. So thank you for doing that fantastic segue there, Steve. But Leicester-Fine Ganuku and Brad Weber will join the All Blacks 15, and TJ will come and join the squad in Edinburgh, or join the All Blacks in Edinburgh. Now, what I think here is that TJ's had a game. Let's give Brad some game time, and hence bring TJ up into the squad. Send Brad Weber down there to start and get it, or come off the bench and get some good game time ahead of the final round of games, or if needed. Leicester-Fine Ganuku, again, another player who's not had much game time, so hence off you go to the All Blacks 15 and get some game time, which I think is actually a good thing there. So I'm not sure TJ will do anything more than hold tackle bags with them. But apparently I've missed something here, because Turner White says AB is not happy with Christie. Okay, I'm not sure what Finlay Christie's been up to, but I would have thought Finlay Christie might even get a start against Scotland with Aaron Smith off the bench, as long as he hasn't done something off the pitch, which may or may not have happened. I don't know on that one, but I would have started Finlay Christie against Scotland and put Aaron Smith on the bench personally, and then TJ being the guy who's there in case one of those two breaks down in training ahead of the game personally. But that would be how I would have read it, but I could be wrong. What are your thoughts about this All Blacks 15? What is the team? Is it a futures team? Is it an extended squad team? Is it a making sure everyone's ready for the Rugby World Cup team? And are you happy with how they're juggling players between them? Do you think it's a good idea, basically having a squad of 60? Are you happy with? Do you understand what the All Blacks 15 is, and are you happy with it?
It's almost like an extended squad, isn't it? Isn't it, Paul? At the end of the day, you know, the extended squad that Foster's got basically at his beck and call. But listen, I do like the concept of touring the Northern Hemisphere, because I mean to say it is a completely different style that's played up there. It's more direct. More direct, you know. The times of the evening that they play the game seem to be a little bit later as well. I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of this particular tour is at the end of the day, Paul, because that even the game against the Barbarians seems to be an odd game, which probably suggests to me that they couldn't probably find any other opposition to play. They'll probably end up playing a few New Zealanders, playing against a few New Zealanders. When's that game? Next Monday morning. They play Scotland. Ironically, I think it's the same time as the All Black game, 2:00. So unless you're going to have two screens running at the same time, that's the only way you're going to be able to keep an eye on those two games. It's pretty odd. I mean to say, on the upside, it's good that it seems like it's almost like a reward for a lot of guys who may have played well in the NPC. And I reckon if they don't do it again next year, Paul, if it's not mirrored again next year, I reckon they've just basically taken an opportunity just to have a quick look at some other players before they go into Super Rugby next year. And by the time they hit Super Rugby, I think they'll have a fair idea who they actually want in their World Cup team for next year. And just remembering, I think a player in Super Rugby next year can play no more than 5 games in a row before they have to be rested.
Right. Okay. So, that's that's going to be fun and games, juggling that one. Is it a hard 5 games? Is it a soft thing? Hey, if someone plays fantastically well in 10 games on the bounce, does that mean he's not eligible for every World Cup? Wouldn't that be funny? Sorry, mate, you are the best. You are the best 9 in the country. You're better than Aaron Smith, but you've played too many games on the bounce. You're not allowed to play for every World Cup. I mean, a couple of things here. Calling it the All Blacks 15 is clearly a marketing issue. And yeah, someone said, is it a marketing scheme? Of course it is. That's why it's called the Maori All Blacks rather than New Zealand Maori, because they've renamed it to try and get more people bums on seats. To me, and then so he said, yeah, if the men's play Canada was better, yes, the All Blacks 15 was supposed to have 4 games, including Canada, plus another international team, but they didn't say who it was, and that fell through. Now, to me, with this one, I guess the reason they're using an All Blacks 15 or come up with this one is because basically Foster has control over this team. When we have a Maori All Blacks team, the Maori All Blacks report into the Maori Rugby Board, not the New Zealand Rugby Board. And so there's a certain degree of autonomy, not a massive amount, but obviously they get second dibs for the players. But there's a bit more autonomy around the Maori All Blacks. I would much prefer this tour or to be using the Maori All Blacks for this role than an All Blacks 15. That's a personal opinion on that one. You want to say something, I assume?
Yeah, just something. I've just got a text from a mate, and he's just basically said possible money grab.
It's totally well. The naming is totally about trying to get put bums on seats if they're going to tour places like the USA, for example. The All Blacks fill a stadium in the USA. The Wallabies don't. The Springboks don't. Why? Because of the strength of the All Blacks brand. Not because they play any better necessarily, but just because the brand is stronger. People know it. It's known outside of rugby. Wallabies, Springboks isn't really known that well outside of rugby. Within rugby, they're equally big, but outside of rugby, they're not. And that's why they've called it, rather than New Zealand 15 or New Zealand B, it's called the All Blacks 15 to try and get people to come to buy tickets who think they're seeing the real All Blacks.
Correct.
So some questions in from the live chat that we should have a talk about. Nocturnal Rights. Can we have a Grand Slam tour with midweek games? Oh, just asking for Santa. Totally, please bring it on. Absolutely. Now, one of the things that the URC has done is they've said there are no games during the international windows. So hence all Leinster, Munster, they're available for games. Munster are actually playing somebody, I can't remember who it is, but they've got a game going on at some point in this window. But yeah, Leinster, Munster, these kind of Ulster, Glasgow Warriors, these teams are all available to play midweek games. So yeah, extended squad, midweek game against Leinster, fantastic, would love it, think it'd be great. All for that. I'm just going to, for those on the podcast, Steve nodding. I'm not going to let him say anything else because we've overrun and it's quite clear what he thinks. Whose attack is the best in the world at the moment, Ireland or France, Stephen?
I think Ireland. I quite like the Irish structures. You know, there are a couple of times on the weekend it was really good defence from South Africa, which actually shut down some moves. The French are a little bit more instinctive with their attack. I wouldn't exactly call them structured in their attack, but the Irish very structured. And boy, any team that can come out to New Zealand and basically play some really good rugby with structure and a little bit of flair has got to be respected. And that's probably, you can arguably say, maybe the best attacking coach at the moment. You know, the likes of Andy Farrell, guys like Tony Brown, who think a little bit outside the square. Yeah, you've got to give them their dues. But listen, it'd be remiss of me not to mention that Australian try scored against France, where Australia did a France on France. Absolutely outrageous try, but once again, that was off broken play. But to take that opportunity, simply amazing.
Andy Farrell's is more a defence coach than an attack coach. I think Mike Catt is probably the attack coach for Ireland. As just an aside on that one. A massive hat tip. Paul O'Connell, the forwards coach, clearly did a fantastic job with the forwards against obviously a wonderful Springbok pack as well. We had those tours back in '76. Well, yes, not trying to write, but wow, that's nearly that's nearly longer ago than I was born. Geez, we're going back a long way there, mate. Clearly, you're a couple of years older than me if you remember those. On that one,
I do.
You Munster's game against the Springboks. Yes, that's true. Who are my top 5 teams in the world at the moment? Well, Ireland, France, the Springboks, New Zealand, and then a big clamour for that next place as to who turns up on the day. I think for 5th place on that one, to be honest. Agree, disagree? Well, as he's muted himself, clearly he agrees with me because I am without me. He agrees. That's good. Do you think about all these? Do you also think Dave Rennie needs Wayne Smith? Everybody needs Wayne Smith. So yes, bluntly, if you can have Wayne Smith as one of your assistant coaches, have him. I don't care who you've got. Get rid of them. Just have him because he is one of the best coaches ever. Never mind at the moment. Imagine having Wayne Smith and Tony Brown as a kind of think squad for as a duo to a brains trust to do an attack. That would be fantastic. Geez. On that note, as I'm off into dream world and just blowing up with in ecstasy and having such a wonderful time, I will say good night to you all, folks, because we've been way too long. Thank you so much, Steve, for coming on yet again, even if you do turn up late. And thank you everybody who's been in the live chat. It's great to have you there. I've enjoyed my gin and tonic, and hopefully you've enjoyed the show.